recording live from somewhere. This is Zach Couples with episode number 25, quarter of them, of the Movement Debrief. And what do we got in store? Well, I'm glad you asked. Today we're going to talk about Genu Recurvatum. Bum, 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 bum. We're going to talk about power training for the elderly peeps. And then we're going to talk about why haven't I spoken to schools about things that I do. But first, before we do that, a little bit of housekeeping. Did you guys see my blog that I put out this week? Well, it wasn't technically a blog, but it was just as cool, if not even more cooler. Technical term? I think so. I was featured on the Physical Preparation podcast, Mike Robertson's spot, robertsontrainingsystems.com. Go ahead, check them out, and give them a shot. And we had a lot of fun. We discussed all types of wild and crazy things. We discussed my time in the NBA. We discussed, getting things done, not the book. Dave Rasco. Oh, yeah, you damn right we discussed Freddie Gibbs, the real Lazewski. Man, if you guys aren't listening to Freddie Gibbs, you better get it twisted and get listening to him. Guy's modern day Tupac, just saying. Hopefully, we won't go there. That's probably a bad joke. But yeah, so we did that, and I'm trying to think what else we talked about. Just all sorts of cool things. So you should go check that out. And his podcast, it's one of my favorite podcasts out there, period. And I feel very fortunate that I got the opportunity to speak on it. I've listened to a lot of the ones that he's put out, and he's had some really good ones. I'm trying to think of some of my most recent favorites. I really liked the one he did with my daddy-o pops, Bill Hartman. Those were always good. Obviously, all the ones he did with the Resilient Boys. Got a good one with Pat Davidson, I believe. Sorry, I'm just plugging Instagram in because my phone is on the verge of meeting its untimely demise. So yeah, you guys should check that out. Other things, housekeeping-wise. Really, there's not much going on, man. I just been, working a lot and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it. Housekeeping. Guys, Human Matrix, the code for maximal health and performance. My 2-day seminar is going to be coming out next September 15th and 16th in Seattle, Washington. We're going to keep releasing more and more information as things go on. But if you want to learn about what I do with people, and how I use multiple different interventions and activities to help people get better and meet their goals, you should go check it out. We'll have fun. We'll get food and stuff like that. Other than that, guys, though, that's pretty much my life. So let's debrief, shall we? First question comes from Jordan. And he says, Zach, hey, what are your thoughts on Genu Recurvatum? It seems like in these people, the quads are not acting as much as they could. So I was wondering what you do for these people. This is kind of a follow-up question to last week's debrief, where I discussed what I do for knee pain and stuff like that. Nick, fam, I'm glad you're going. Please come talk to me, and we will get together and have fun. So Genu Recurvatum, things to consider with this. Because one would think that they have a hard time with active quadriceps extension, and that may be very well true. But a couple things to consider, at least the way I'm thinking about this from a biomechanical standpoint. One, I don't necessarily think that... the way I would think of the quads in the case of someone with Genu Recurvatum is they are overactive, but in a different sense compared to what you may see from a volitional contraction. So the way that I think of it, because with these individuals, I would still go after hamstrings big time. Because if we have an excessive amount of knee hyperextension, which is characterized by Genu Recurvatum, all right, what happens is the knee joint is obviously pushed back. And so what does this? Well, I think quadriceps are one thing that does this. And to me, I would consider the quadriceps in this case a bit more tonically active, more so as like a postural stabilizer that's continually pushing the knee into hyperextension. That's one piece. Another piece to consider that you'll often see with people like this is what the foot's doing. And so what the foot can do in this case is oftentimes they're a little bit more predisposed to plantar flexion via the soleus. Because I can also extend my knee, and you guys probably won't be able to see this, but I can also extend my knee by plantar flexing, right? Like if I contract my gastroc and my soleus and I shorten the distal portion of those muscles, I can buy a little bit more length at the proximal portion of those muscles, which could potentially allow for greater knee extension. And so what I see in these people is you have a quad on one side and the gastroc and soleus on the other side, driving things into an end range position over time. Potentially you get some adaptations at the capsule, so on and so forth. Problems occur, fam, and you get Genu recurvatum. And so think about it. If I have a muscle that's tonically active and I put it to end range, it's going to be very hard for it to generate force because it's constantly active trying to create some semblance of stability at the knee joint. And so what do you do for Genu recurvatum? Well, I'm glad you asked. So what I would do in this case, obviously I'll look at my assessment. That will give me some ideas, but I will say generally the process is still the same. You're going to go after sagittal plane activities, emphasizing the hamstrings in particular. And the hamstrings will do two things. One, you'll get something that reciprocally inhibits the quads, at least theoretically. This is how I'm thinking. Is this what actually happening? I don't know. I've just seen it work. But you get something that inhibits the quads to some degree, and the calves for that measure. And I think also what's very important with these people is teaching them to squat, pushing the knees forward and descending into a squat, because what that does is that allows for better excursion of the gastrocs, and so you take them out of that position of hyperextension. So that would kind of be my treatment process that I would look at for Genu recurvatum. So it's very similar to what you would do for anyone with knee issues. You go after sagittal plane, particularly hamstrings, restore multi-directional hip mobility, and then you'll probably want to address the foot in this case, so make sure you're teaching squatting mechanics where the weight's on their heels and they're pushing their knees forward so you can get them to get better control and coordination of knee extension, especially if you're cueing some heel contact as they rise out of the bottom of the squat. So, Jordan, awesome question, fam. That was my thoughts on Genu recurvatum. Question 2. This comes from Tim. Hey, Zach. You mentioned on the Mike Robertson podcast, Physical Preparation podcast, check it out, guys, that you think power is a big thing for elderly clients. What kind of things are you doing to address power? Tim, phenomenal question, my man. Really phenomenal question. So what I'm doing to address power is this. Let me just preface this. This discussion was really spurred, and my thought process in this regard was from the Resilient guys. Obviously, I think one of the better ways for me to teach power to these people, especially because I don't have super heavy weights, is plyometric type training. Because you can at least get some velocity production there, and you can produce force pretty fast. So what I do is, for a lot of my people, a lot of medicine ball throws in various positions. And so I'll probably do a longer post on this at some point to show you some of them. But for a lot of these people, I get them either standing in a squat stance to start, if they can, half kneeling, tall kneeling, and we just throw a medicine ball as hard as we physically possibly can. I used to be a little bit biased against the rebounding mats that you often see in PT clinics, but I've been using the snot out of them because you get someone to throw something hard and fast, and then that quick rebound challenges them from a balance standpoint because they have to catch and manage position. And so I do a lot of med ball throws in multiple directions. So I'll either start half kneeling, tall kneeling, or in a squat stance. Eventually we work to split stance. We'll do split stance forward. We'll do split stance lateral, and work on med ball throws that way. We'll do overhead throws. We'll do step throws, which would basically be like step into a lunge pattern and throw hard. I'm trying to think of what else I would do. Some single leg type things. Basically anything where they have to do something fast and they have a balance perturbation, that's what I do. Dana, how you doing, girlfriend? That would be what I typically do for these people from a power standpoint. One thing that's on my radar, I just haven't had someone who I would consider a candidate yet, is doing some more lower body plyometrics. And the reason why I haven't had someone who I've pushed to this level is because a lot of the people who I work with have a hard time squatting and deadlifting, as an example. And so what I do with these people instead is I teach them those things. But like, let's say I can get someone who can squat and deadlift pretty well without much coaching. Then I might think about doing some type of drop landings in place, maybe some light hops when they're supported, those types of things. Because I think one thing I've learned as I've been working with more of a geriatric population, or at least more exposure to that. Oh, I see you, iFast. But one thing I've been doing when I was, since I've been more exposed to a geriatric population, is IndyFast has thrown me completely off. What the hell were we talking about? The older in the population, these guys lose a lot of skills. And an example of a skill that they might lose would be getting up and down off the ground. And I think that jumping, responding from perturbations, all these things are skills. And I don't think, assuming that they can control position at lower intensities, such as a squat or a deadlift, that it's unreasonable, unless there is something that's that would deter you from doing so, so maybe some type of total joint or something like that. I don't think there's much reason why you wouldn't go towards some type of lower body plyometrics. It's just something I haven't gotten to yet, because a lot of the people who I'm working with, at least right now, that were after the conversation I had with Resilient, they just aren't, they're just not appropriate for that yet. But I'm thinking that that's what I'm shooting towards. Stay tuned. Maybe once I get a little bit more exposure with some of my people, I'll write up how I look at jump progressions for a geriatric population, or at least lower body plyometrics. But all types of med ball throws are a phenomenal way to start that process, and it's been very, very good for the clients that I've worked with, and I've seen some really good changes from a balance, a power, and a strength standpoint. So, Tim, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Stay tuned. I'm hoping to evolve that. Last question comes from my wonderful mentee, Dana, who I believe is still watching on Facebook. So, what? Dana asks, Zach, I continue to be motivated and excited by everything I'm learning from you, Bill, Hartman, IFAST, PRI, and many more 6 degrees that I'm being introduced to. What's crazy to me is that PT school is not catching up from a content standpoint with some of the things that we are doing. Why is that? And the reason why she asks is because there's very few PTs who she feels confident referring to in her area. Have I ever had any conversations with PT school administration, professors, or anyone else? We'd love to elevate the profession. And Dana, this is an awesome question. I have not had any conversations, well, not recently. When I was in when I was in my residency, and I'll probably admit that some of this was because I had a huge ego then as well. Trying to do some of these things did not seem to go over well despite results. And again, I'll probably fault that to just my delivery at that point in time. But I think the reason why PT school is not catching up is because of what the goal of PT school is, and I think just some of the processes that are in place too, because the ultimate goal of a physical therapy school is to produce physical therapists who can help the community, ideally generalists or whatever. And that probably is a little bit different goal-wise pending your location. My school is very big at producing general physical therapists. I know other schools that emphasize a lot more research than, say, we did. So if I want to produce physical therapists, the most important thing that I can do is ensure that they pass the test. Because if they don't pass the test, then I don't get physical therapists. Maybe I don't get accredited. Problems, fam. And so if I can't pass tests, that's a problem, right? So what I have to do is ensure that I can teach my peeps to pass the test. And, well, if you look at the test, there's a lot of concepts on there that are still dated. And so I think addressing this problem has to start with that, is what are we using to appropriately evaluate what makes a good physical therapist versus not a good physical therapist. And a test shows you at least have minimum competency, that you're not going to hurt someone. And so is it possible to change? Yeah, exactly, Nick. You got to pass those boards, fam. So is it possible to change the testing protocol? And that I have no idea. I really have no idea, because I don't know. I really don't. And what makes it tough with some of the things that I do and some of my contemporaries is, while we appreciate and observe the evidence, and we use evidence, not just research, but clinical evidence and all these things, basically all the pillars of evidence-based practice, to make sound decisions and try to rationalize what we do, there are very few supportive studies showing that what we exactly do is effective in terms of that are well designed, like randomized controlled trials and stuff like that. And potentially, I would say, if you are trying to teach things that are poorly evidence-based out of school, that's probably not a good look, especially when accreditation is king. So, I don't fault PT schools for not teaching some of the stuff that we talk about. In some cases, even if we see it clinically effective. But then again, too, that's why I do think research in some of these endeavors is important, because while I think I do pretty well clinically, there's people who I don't do well with clinically. And I constantly am questioning myself, is the change that I got meaningful? Is the change that I hear you 100%, Nick. Is the change that I'm making clinically meaningful? Is it because I did this intervention? Is it all of these things? And do I just recognize the successes and forget the failures? Or do I take those failures into consideration and wonder what I'm doing? And that's why you have to have some type of critical appraisal system in place to ensure that you don't let your biases get into the mix. So I don't know if it's a worthy fight to try to get schools teaching this stuff, because I don't know if I have all the answers, Ha! Yes, they work wonders. Those blackout curtains do. But I don't have the answers for everyone, and I don't know if what I'm doing is considered best practice, because what standard? You know, the only standard that I have is best practice against myself and maybe some of the peers in my clinic. But that's a small sample size, and really, but what's important to me is that I meet the best standards that help my clients, and if I'm doing things that aren't helping my clients, I need to do a better job of recognizing very quickly that something needs to change, and whether that's reappraising some of the evidence that I've come across, whether that's changing what I'm doing, whether that's taking another class that maybe is outside of the evidence-based practicum or practice. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think there is a right answer. But I will say this too. There's a lot of people out there who can spend a lot of time learning some of the things that maybe I've learned, and some of the things that some of my contemporaries have learned. And even with that, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's competency present. And the reason why I say that is because and I'm sure this is true of me as well, but I've had failed patients from people who have had exposure to some of the things that I've had exposure to, and some of my other contemporaries. So it doesn't mean that if we change the curriculum that all of a sudden the quality problem that you're mentioning, Dana, is going to go away. It's just it's just like anything, any skill, any profession. You're going to have the gamut of people. You're going to have people who are really, really good. Some people who are great. You're going to have the Michael Jordans of any profession. But you're also going to have if to use the basketball analogy, the Zach Couppleses of the profession as well. In the sense that not everyone's going to have the skill set necessary to help a lot of people. It's just the way it is. And some people don't want that. Some people don't want to spend countless hours trying to get better at their craft. Maybe they have a family that they want to spend more time focusing on, and they're just using this as a medium to help their family. And I don't fault them for that. A lot of it goes into what's important to you. And I think that is the critical piece that's missing. I don't think it's changing the school system. I think it's changing what it means to be great at something and instilling that into our people. And maybe that's what PT school really needs to do, is continue to push that with the people who go to PT school. But at the same time, too, it's hard because the motivation to do so is lackluster. There's not a lot of reward for being good in PT. Because guess what? Very rarely is it that you will get a substantial amount of more money to pay off those damn student loans for doing a good job. Some clinics want you to keep patients longer, which is something we shouldn't want as clinicians. And like that's a tough sell. I could see why some people don't strive to get better and mail it in. Like, it's just, what's the incentive? I mean, the incentive for me to try to do good work is because I personally have some. Trevor, I will answer your question. Is I have some intrinsic motivation to do good at this, and maybe it's because there's a little bit of insanity for me. Appreciate you, America. But maybe it's just who I am, that whenever I go into something, I go all in, and it's regardless of what it's going to cost me. That's just how I am with things. It's a little bit of an addictive personality trait that I have. Yes, Trevor, hang on. I'm going to read your question real quick. Use techniques, concepts, communicate. Yes, Trevor, I will answer your question, and this is the perfect place to do it. So thank you for asking it. But point being is, like, just some people want to be good at what they do, and others need other types of motivational things to be good at what they do. And maybe not everyone wants to have that intrinsic motivation for PT to do that, and it's just a job, and that's okay. Like, it sucks because you're helping other people, but we have to be okay with that. And if that means that there are very few practitioners who you trust from a referral source, I think that's just the nature of the situation that we're in. And I don't know what the solution is. Maybe the solution is really cut down the student loan price, or go somewhere cheap. Give incentives to make people be better. If they can't get the intrinsic incentive, or just maybe we need to instill intrinsic incentives into some people better than we're doing now. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, and I realize it was a little bit rambly, so I don't know if I answered the question. But point being, it's a complex problem, and well, I think it would be really cool if they taught some of the things that we do in PT school. I don't think it's going to solve the problem. I think the problem has to do with wanting to do good work in whatever you do. And it's really tough to do that in the system that we're in. And that's why I think a lot of the really good people try to get out of that system. So, good question, Dana. Wow. Trevor, how the hell are you, man? Trevor asked a question on the Facebook, so I'm going to see what he said. Any advices for trainers or strength coaches who use a lot of these techniques, concepts to communicate effectively with professionals, PTs in particular, who aren't familiar with them? It sometimes feels like we're speaking different languages. Trevor, that's a great question. It's a really good question. Well, I think you would treat this in the same way you would educating a client, or educating a patient, or educating someone who doesn't have the knowledge base that you have. And that's, you have to meet them at their story. And so I think to adequately educate other practitioners, since that's what Trevor's asking, that involves understanding what their knowledge base is, first and foremost. Because if you don't get that, then you will never have a common language, right? You may be able to speak English extremely well, but if your therapist speaks Spanish, you're going to have a very hard time. So you have to learn a little bit of the Spanish so you can communicate more effectively with them. So that would be the very first thing I would consider. Once you understand where they're coming from and how they look at things, then you have to kind of go back and appraise what you know and say, okay, therapist X thinks this, this, and this. Those things are related to what I'm doing in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's this way. So how can I bridge that gap? So maybe I'm going to say, hey, you know how you work on this concept? I think if you do this and this, that might be help supporting of that, or for some reason. So, like, for example, I'm working with a physical therapy assistant right now where I'm at. We just hired one. And, man, I don't know what the hell language I speak, but I have to kind of educate him on what we need to do with the patient based on what he knows. And a lot of what he knows, because he's fresh out of school, is, well, you're taught in PTA school. And so, for example, one thing I might say in his case is, like, if he's working with someone who had a total knee replacement, and I don't give two shits about quad sets, which I typically don't, and maybe I want him to instead emphasize hamstrings so we can restore knee mobility. Spoiler alert, that works quite a bit. What I might say is, instead of, hey, let's do this, this, and this to establish, to get the quad to relax and so on and so forth, maybe I say something like, hey, my man, so you see how this guy's limited in knee extension and knee flexion? A lot of times what can happen is, if you don't balance the quadriceps to hamstrings ratio, sometimes you can see limitations in motion, which potentially is a protective mechanism. And so what I want you to emphasize, instead of really pushing to get knee extension, is let's see if we can get the hamstrings and balance that out and see if that makes a difference. That might be an example, as opposed to saying, their pelvis is forward and they're extended at the rib cage and they can't poop or whatever. I don't know. Things like that. And so if you're a coach or you're a trainer, say you have a client who can't deadlift because they have limitations in posterior hip mobility, that's preventing them to posteriorly weight shift. Instead of saying they need to be able to shift back in their hips or whatever language you use, I don't know exactly, Trevor, what your background is, but maybe what you say is maybe they know that they do a lot of mulligan type stuff to increase hip internal rotation. And so you'll say, hey, I'm having a hard time getting this guy to deadlift. And the reason why I'm having a hard time is because they can't shift their weight back. And instead of making a suggestion of saying, hey, I need you to get this, maybe you say, what do you think? Maybe we could look at this together and kind of problem solve based on what your examination looks like. And that could be one thing. That could be a great marketing thing. So you guys have a little bit of back and forth referral sources, but it also creates the conversation. So maybe you build trust, you trust their skill set, what have you, and you want to see how they can look at things from their lens, and perhaps that allows you to have further conversations once you've met them at their story to bring them a little closer to what you're thinking. So to kind of summarize things, understand their thought process, see if you can relate it back to your thought process, meet somewhere in the middle, trust their judgment, and once you've gotten that, then you can slowly bring them in and educate them on what you do. But if you show them respect and show them that you appreciate that what you're doing and that you want their help, a lot of times that can make a big difference in that conversation. So, Trevor, I hope that answers your question. It was a really good question, man. Otherwise, guys, it's been a long day. I think that's a good stopping point. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Where can you find more? I'll tell you. First off, go to zachcouples.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter while you're there. Peace, chicken grease, CB. You can subscribe to my newsletter while you are there. You get a free acute chronic workload calculator. You get all types of free stuff, fam. So go ahead and sign up for that. I also got some online services if you want that. Movement consultations. I help people move better over the interwebs based on what my examination looks like. So I can help you with that. If you're a trainer, I've paired with a few trainers in my day. Shout out to Dave Rasco, Method Strength. Shout out to Lucy Hendricks and Dave Wilton of Enhancing Life. And shout out to Andy Mccloy of BCI. Those are like my three peeps. If you want to join the cool kids, come talk to me and we'll work with your people. So I do that. I also offer mentoring, which one of the questions today was from one of my mentees. So you want to go ahead and check that out. I'll help you out, understand whatever concepts we need to talk about. If you like something that I've written and you want to learn more, I'll mentor you through it, fam, and we'll get you where you need to go. Other thing I do is online fitness training. I'll write you programs monthly, especially if you're trying to lose a little bit of the chub or you're just post-rehab. Maybe you had a surgery and you want to try to figure this stuff out on your own. And or maybe you're an athlete and you want to get a little bit of hop on your get up kind of thing. Go ahead and check me out there. Otherwise, you can find me on Facebook. That's you guys, facebook.com/ZCouples. You can also like my page, which is Zach Couples PT. I'm also on Twitter. Twitter handle is @ZCouples, excuse me. And I'm also on that Instagram, baby. Instagram.com/Zach, Z-A-C, Couples. You can also find me on YouTube. Look up Zach Couples. Get after it, guys. Otherwise, you wonderful people, thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys keep it real, but not to the extent where things go wrong. Stay hungry, stay learning, stay moving, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.